I came out here because I feel this deep urgency to record, and now I'm questioning where I'm sitting because I'm deeply aware of the outside noise that maybe I wasn't so aware of before I recognized the need for quiet in order to record this. And that's an interesting concept, actually, as I think about the message that I wanted to speak on. It's in these moments when we require something different that we are suddenly aware that there has been something in the background that we were not able to perceive before. And I think this is the most important part of where we find ourselves right now. That for whatever reason, there is enough space now that what we are calling for from the inside, from beneath the depths of our being, there is space now. I think for each of us, this will probably be happening in different ways, but I imagine the theme is wholly similar. As I mentioned in the beginning, I am experiencing a deep urge, and with it also comes the knowing that if I do not figure this out before I die, I will feel utterly and completely horrified. Obviously, this centers around expressing myself fully, truthfully, honestly, authentically. And I imagine that this is a theme for all of us. In fact, is this not actually us recognizing our soul? But more importantly than discussing this sense of soul urgency, I want to highlight one very important piece that constricts us from being able to come to this place of acceptance. And I'm going to tell you a story to explain this more clearly. The other day when I was in the grocery store, I was wandering the aisles looking for a specific kind of bread, and I began to get frustrated at the thought that I may never find what I am looking for, that there are so many options and choices, but none of them are exactly the way I need them to be. I'm trying to find a kind of bread that, first of all, I am not allergic to, but also one that is readily available and affordable. And then my thoughts started to spiral. Yet I also recognized it wasn't as if I was having a whole bunch of thoughts happening in that moment. I suddenly found myself getting extremely upset, angry, rageful even. This is always where I find myself in the middle of the aisle, not able to feel that I can find what I need without searching, without feeling unsupported, without feeling like there will actually be something that fully meets my needs. And this was not the first time that I have gotten extremely upset when it comes to food and shopping for food and preparing meals and trying to find things that will not make me sick. But what was so different about this moment, and I can still see myself in the middle of the aisle where I stopped and realized what was happening in my mind, that I was internalizing all of this anger and really what had become suppressed rage. And for whatever reason in that moment, it suddenly hit me that I was attacking myself when I was not actually the one to blame. I had had both of these thoughts before. that it was so difficult to meet my needs, and that I was so angry that it was this hard. And I am also very much aware and have voiced this opinion quite often that it is the system that is doing these things to us. It is not my fault. Years ago, I had an epiphany. I often felt guilty when it came to recycling waste, garbage versus recycling, how maybe I wasn't recycling enough, how maybe I was wasting too much, buying too many items that were in containers that needed to be disposed of, and how then I was frantically searching for ways to reduce this. How come it wasn't more easy to find products that didn't require so much waste in order to use them? Or how come these products didn't come in packaging that was more biodegradable? And that's when it dawned on me that this is not my fault. These companies, these corporations, are producing products in this kind of packaging. And yet, somehow, the burden falls on the consumer to reduce your use, to somehow create less waste on our own. And yet, we are not the source of this problem. So I have been very aware for a very long time that the system we live in creates the problems and puts a burden on us to somehow solve this problem. How can we fix a problem we are not actually causing? How can we be expected to fix a problem that is continuously being caused by something beyond our control? Now, my point in mentioning all of this is that as I was standing there in the bread aisle, in the grocery store, as I have done so many times, I had never had both of those thoughts in the same moment. It is so hard to find what I need, and I have been punishing myself for this. What is so important to recognize about this is that this is the world that we have been existing within. I'm sure many of you understand and know that we live in a world where we are under some sort of control that we did not create. And although this is an understanding I have carried for a long time, it has seemed impossible to get out from underneath. But I've recently been able to realize that this is very similar to having grown up in a toxic family system. And that actually, when I look back at how that works, it's much easier to understand this overarching system that we are trying to exist within. Because that system does not exist based on truth. That system exists based on the manipulation of truth. That system exists because the manipulated truth has become a belief, that it spends its time and energy convincing anyone who is in proximity to it that this is a truth. And the only way to escape the control that this system has over us is to awaken to this false belief. And so a very large part of the reason that these systems continue to exist is because we have not yet clearly seen how we have been conditioned to blame ourselves. Even if we inherently know that this belief is wrong, subconsciously beneath a level that we are consciously aware of, we are blaming ourselves. So it follows then that freedom is found in understanding who and what is oppressing you, in understanding what their goal is, and in understanding what they are truly afraid of. Why would they be so insistent on keeping this lie a secret? Why would they be so insistent in convincing us that our struggles are something we need to fix for them? If all of our energy is being directed into trying to fix a problem that we did not cause, what would be the value in that? We have no energy left to live, to exist as our sole purpose. And we'll talk about this more, how to recognize what's going on inside of you in order to begin to unravel these things. But for now, I'd ask you to consider this. What if everything that you think is a problem and a failure in your life is not actually your fault? And I know in some ways you already know this. So what if you were to consider that if you are still struggling with these things, it is because somewhere inside of you, subconsciously, you might have learned, you might be doing a very good job at blaming yourself. Once we properly assign blame to the correct villain, this frees us to be clear, to see what is truly ours, to deal with. And yes, maybe there is a lot we still need to deal with, but also consider you haven't been able to properly and fully deal with these things because so much of you has been consumed by having to blame yourself in order to keep yourself stuck to this system in order to provide fuel for it. One of the things that used to keep me up at night is wondering that even if I am in my power, what is there to do with it when we live in this kind of world? If there is something that is truly controlling us, what kind of options do we actually have? But I have also come to truly understand that we cannot ever be fully kept from our power. And once we recognize it, once we are able to stand in that place, the system has no control over you, even if the system exists and continues to try to control. And perhaps there will be people that it always has control over. You can exist outside of the system. And as the system loses its energy source, as more people wake up to this and step away from it and climb out of that space of fear, it will need to find more resources for itself. Because more than anything, the system wants to stay alive. The system does not want to have to change. And that is the inherent flaw, or what makes that so different from humanity. In order to grow, in order to live, in order to be human, what it truly even means to be human is to evolve. But the system has no interest in evolving. In fact, evolving is a threat to the system itself. And that may in fact be where there is this divergence between those who feel a strong urge to evolve, to climb out of this place where they have been feeling stuck for lifetimes, and those who are much more comfortable being controlled. So for today, consider where you might be blaming yourself for the circumstances of your life. And is there somewhere else that this blame should be placed? And might that free you up to do the things you need to do for yourself to have a better life today?